Welcome to session 19. Now, when people first start using Archicad, when they come over from another platform, they often complain or suggest, why aren't there specific tools called a specific name? Why is there not a ceiling tool? And the things that I love about the way in which we use Archicad is that Archicad's super flexible, and if we look at the tools merely as a geometry, then we can get so much more out of it and actually get better outcomes. It becomes more flexible and capable of meeting the modeling needs that we have without having to jump through hoops. Now, today, we've got Laszlo Nagy, and for many of those people that are actually on Archicad Talk a lot, he's one of the main moderators on that site, so he'll normally be the one that gets back to you or comments on your posts or tries to provide you help and support when he's on there. So today, he's taking some time out from his moderating career to talk to us about some of the creative ways in which we can use the curtain wall tool to produce other outcomes that you may not have thought of before. So take it away, Laszlo.
Hi, Nathan. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this event. It's not every day that you get the chance to speak to such a large number of Archicad users, such a large global audience, so I definitely appreciate the opportunity. So my session is going to be about creative use of the curtain wall tool. Just as a short forward, you're working in Archicad trying to model a lot of different architectural elements. But Archicad has a certain set of tools that you can use. If you are trying to create foundations or ceilings or, let's say, roof soffits, roof fascias, Archicad doesn't have dedicated tools for these types of elements. So when you have the idea in your head, like what type of 2D and 3D geometry and representation you're trying to achieve, what kind of data you want to get out of the model, like in labels or scheduling, then if you are familiar with the capabilities and limitations of the Archicad tools, then you can, based on these requirements, you can easily select which tool is the most suitable to do the job. So I'm going to show a couple of examples when I think the curtain wall is the tool to use to achieve what we want. And let's get right into it and have some fun in this 40 minutes with the curtain wall tool. So first, let me just resize my own picture into the lower left corner, just like this. And so now here we are in the Archicad 3D window. So let's say that the first example I'm going to show you is a perforated brick wall. So for whatever reason you want to model every single brick in a brick wall, maybe for visualization purposes, or it's a level of detail requirement, or data exchange, or you want to be able to schedule every single brick for whatever reason, this is what we want to do. So let's see how we are going to achieve it. So first of all, I'm going to activate the curtain wall tool, and if we go to its settings dialog and go to the scheme page, we can see that this is going to be an empty curtain wall. So it will have no frames and no panels to begin with. We're going to create those. It will only have a few boundary frames, so there is actually some geometry that is visible in 3D. So we are going to place this curtain wall in 3D, and first I'm going to make it only 2 meters long, and actually I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, 1200 millimeters high. The reason for this is because we're going to create a lot of geometry, a lot of frames, a lot of panels, and first we want to just create the pattern, make sure it's good, and when we are done, then we can extend it to its real length and real height, and we are going to be able to, model fast. Of course, this example is not like a very good example. It's this performance thing is of course more important when you have like a very large curtain walls where thousands of frames and panels are generated. In that case, this little trick can be very helpful. So here we are. It seems like I'm going to need to flip the curtain wall to the other side. Okay, just like that. So I have a worksheet, an independent worksheet, in which I drew, using fills and lines, I drew the pattern that I want to create. We can see it, we have these bricks, there are some mortars where the bricks overlap, and this blue rectangle shows the pattern size. So this is the only thing that we will have to model using frames and panels, and then the curtain wall tool will propagate this pattern throughout the whole geometry. So what I like to do in such a case, let's go back to 2D. I have an elevation here, so I'm going to open this elevation window, because in this elevation view it will be very easy to create the pattern, to place the frames and the panels. So here is my curtain wall. Now what I'm going to do is I go back to the project map and select the brick pattern worksheet, right click, and show it as trace reference. So now those fills and lines are visible in my elevation, so it will be helpful when I try to create the actual patterns. So now I'm going to select my curtain wall and go to the edit mode to start creating. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two boundary frames, and I'm going to make them invisible, because in the finished curtain wall we're not going to have boundary frames. So let's start creating the pattern. Make it a little bit larger. Okay, I activate the curtain wall frame tool, and I select the mortar 10mm favorite. So now I'm going to start drawing frames. So this is a frame which I'm going to create a copy of. Alright, and then the vertical mortars, I select all three of these. I'm using shift click to select them, and then right click, move, drag multiple copies, and create copies of these frames. Alright, and now there are a few frames that are not needed, so I'm going to select these. So again, shift click, and these 6 frames, and we can delete these because we don't need them. Alright, so now we have the mortars of the brick wall modeled by curtain wall frames. Now we can make the pattern visible by clicking in this eye icon. Let's zoom out a little bit and we can see the pattern box in red. So I'm going to click the lower left corner and use the box stretch command to stretch it. And this is going to be the lower left corner of the pattern box. And also do the same thing with the, let's make it visible, and upper right corner, and this point is going to be the opposite corner of the pattern. You can see with red the frames that are going to make up the pattern. And I click and then click the apply button, and the curtain wall tool propagates the whole pattern throughout the whole geometry of the curtain wall. So now we have the frames. Now we can go to the curtain wall settings dialog and do and create the panels. So among the panels, I created a panel class called brick. This is a 125 millimeter thick panel, and its building material is brick. This is the panel class that I'm going to apply. Go back to the scheme window, and I select the panel. Let's resize it so the pattern is bigger. I select this panel. Now it's a deleted panel, and now I apply the brick class to it. So now it's brick, and I also select this panel, apply brick, and so I created the brick panels. That's OK, and show it so the whole thing is visible. So now we have our wall, and we're not done yet because we actually don't have mortars in these places. We have mortars only where two bricks overlap. So we have to modify the frames, make them invisible frames. So again, we go back to the settings panel, and here in the scheme we can modify the frames. Here in the frames panel, you can see that we have 3 frame classes that we defined. And actually this frame class, this generated frame 1 frame class, is what Archicad now just generated based on the frames that we drew. As you can see, currently all the frames use this frame class. They are highlighted in gray. So in the scheme page, we just have to modify these. So first, we're gonna select with shift click these 4 frames, and we're gonna assign the mortar 10 millimeter frame class. Then let's continue with the rest of the horizontal frames. We're gonna make these invisible because we don't need to see them as mortar, and we're gonna apply this invisible frame horizontal class to them. Okay, and now we have the vertical frames left. 6 vertical frames. Select them and apply the invisible frame vertical frame class to them. So now if we click OK, we can see the result. It takes some time to generate it. And now if we exit edit mode, we can see the result. We can also hide the trace reference. We don't need it now. Okay, so now we have actually the result that we tried to achieve. Okay, there's one thing we have to do, which is we have to make the boundary frames invisible, because we don't need boundary frames now that we have the actual structure. Okay, so now we are done. Let's look at it in 3D. So this is how now it looks in 3D. And now that we have it, we can just extend its length to the desired length. You will see that it takes a bit of time for Archicad to generate all those frames and panels. And we increase the height to 2400 millimeters. Yeah, this also takes some time to generate. So here you can see why it's better to have a small curtain wall, why we are just doing the pattern and not the full-sized curtain wall. Okay, so now we're finished with it, and so let's go back to 2D and look at the floor plan representation. As you can see, it's a correct floor plan representation. If we look at the settings, I would suggest probably the home story only option is recommended, and for floor plan display it can be the cut only option, in which you will see the building material visible in the bricks that the floor plan cut pane cuts, or you can use the outline only option, which is also possible. Okay, so now let's go into 3D again, and there is one thing I want to mention. Let's say that we think that, well, we don't want to actually model the mortars. It's too many polygons. We want to save on polygons. So there are actually two ways to do that. The first is to go to the model view options dialog, and there is a curtain wall options panel. And in this panel, you can actually turn off frames or panels or any of the components of curtain walls. So I created another model view option combination in which frames are turned off, curtain wall frames. So now all we have to do is we have to apply this model view combination. And as you can see, no curtain wall frames are generated. So actually there is no mortar between the bricks. Of course, this might not be the best solution in every case, because you know what, if you modeled other things in using curtain walls and you want to see the frames of those. I mean, the model view option is a global setting, so it will apply to everything. So in this case, let's go back to the other model view option combination, and we have to do something with this individual curtain wall. We can select it, go to its settings dialog, and what we can do is that we can go to the scheme dialog and actually select those frames that are representing the mortar and make them invisible, just like the other frames. Then if we click OK, then it takes a bit of time to process it, and then all mortar frames are actually going to be invisible and only the bricks are going to be generated. Okay, just maybe something to show. I created a little schedule. Let's go to the scheme settings. So its criteria is very simple. Element type is panel, curtain wall panel, and the panel class contains the word brick. As you remember, we applied the brick panel class to all these panels that represent the bricks. And I just, for schedule fields, I just schedule the panel class and then count them. So we will have a number of bricks in the wall. So if we actually generate this schedule, we can see that this particular perforated brick wall has 480 bricks in it. Okay, so this was the first example, and then let's go to the next one. So the next example is going to be a window assembly that we can see here. We are going to reproduce this. It has some various panels, thick panels, thin panels. There are some glass panels, fixed glass panels. There are some windows, and it extends to floors. If we create a horizontal cut, this is how it's going to look like, the final result. Here is a vertical cut of what the result is that we are trying to achieve. So let's go and let's try to recreate it. Again, I created a worksheet in which I used fills and lines and dimensions to construct the exact pattern that I'm trying to achieve. So let's go to the floor plan and select this instance and just delete it. And one thing that we notice is that here I have created an opening element. So I cut an opening into the wall because the window, the curtain wall itself cannot cut an opening into a wall if it's used as a window assembly. So we have to use the opening tool to do that. So let's start with an empty scheme, and we have various frame classes that we created in advance, and also some panel classes that we are going to use. And I'm going to create the scheme in the curtain wall settings dialog, because this is a relatively simple scheme. It has only horizontal and vertical frames and panels, so we can just create the grid pattern in this dialog by creating columns and rows of frames and panels, and then just we set them according to our needs. So now we are going to have 3 columns, and from left to right I'm going to enter the width values of these 3 columns, and actually the total width is going to be 3600 millimeters, and we are going to have 6 rows, and going from bottom to top, let's just quickly type the values of the various rows that we are going to have in this assembly. And the total height of the pattern is going to be 5400 millimeters. So now we have the skeleton. Let's set the frames to the correct frame classes. So these 2 rows of frames are going to be divisions, and there are a lot of horizontal frames that are also going to be divisions. Actually, this one and this one will not be, and we will actually have a few physical frames. For example, these are going to be dark gray frames, and these 2 frames are going to be light gray. These are going to separate the glass panel from the window. So now we have our frames done. Let's set the panels. This is going to be an orange box, 200 millimeter thick. This is going to be the same, only in a gold color. We're gonna have 2 of these. Actually, we have these frames, which are also division frames, and we have this panel and this panel. These are going to be light gray colored boxes. This one is going to be a dark gray panel. These 2 are going to be fixed glass panels, and these 2 panels are going to be curtain wall windows placed into the curtain wall assembly. So let's click OK, and now we can place the geometry of the curtain wall. I'm sorry, I need to use this method. Okay. And now if we go back to 3D, let's just display the curtain wall for now. We can see that we almost achieved the geometry that we were trying to achieve. There are a few things that we need to do. The first is that let's just show the frames, and this frame also needs to be a dark gray frame, and its frame intersection priority number needs to set a little bit lower, for example 8, so that it correctly intersects with these 2 other dark gray frames. Alright, let's see the result. Yes, so this is what we wanted to achieve. By the way, just to show you that these windows are actual windows placed into the window assembly. You can even open the window if you want. So windows and doors can be part of a curtain wall. Alright, and now if we look at the final result, and let's say we create a vertical cut plane, then we can see here that yes, this is the exact result that we aimed to achieve with this curtain wall element. Okay, so this was the second example. Let's go on to the next one. So this one is, if I select this, this is a foundation, and it is created using a single multi-segment curtain wall element. I think that this is a case when one would not think that, maybe you could do this using the curtain wall tool, but it is possible. So let's see how we did it. Let me delete this curtain wall and recreate it from scratch. So this curtain wall actually doesn't have much of a scheme. It only has a simple panel. So the concrete foundation is actually going to be constructed using panels, and we're going to have some frames that will model the corners where the foundation turns. There are a few things that we will need to keep in mind. The first is that let's start generating the curtain wall, and you will see that I'm starting in this position, and I will tell you why. So let's just draw the geometry very quickly, and click to the necessary points. I do it from this below because I can see the directions more clearly. It's easier, and this is the end point. Okay, and so now we have this foundation geometry. The reason I started from this point is because if we start a curtain wall geometry from a corner, and we want to join the start and the end of the curtain wall geometry, we will not be able to do it, because a curtain wall cannot connect to itself at a corner. It's a limitation. However, if we start the curtain wall at a general point on a straight edge, then the start and the end point of the curtain wall will just butt against each other and form a correct 3D connection. So this is why I started there. And so now what we do, we will need to solve the corners, and we will need to solve this stepping of the geometry of the curtain wall. So let's go to edit mode, and just very quickly let me yeah, so we don't have frames at the corners at the moment. That's good. So let's display just the scheme, and let's also display the context and modify the geometry of this the boundaries of the segments. So first we need to lower this to a lower level for these segments. We need to lower it by 1500. Yes, and I think what I need to do is I will need to set this segment pattern origin to 0, 0. Yes, that's right. And now we have this segment left. We have to make this higher by 1500. Okay. Actually, we have to move this one as well to here, so it properly aligns. Okay, now we have these geometries, and now we are going to use frames to create this stepping geometry. How are we going to do this? We actually activate the frame. We're going to use an invisible frame. So I'm going to hover here, wait for the snap point, and then hover my cursor on the edge, and then type tab 1000 and enter. and it's gonna start at point 1000 along this edge from this snap point. And now I'm going to lock my direction to a 60-degree angle. So now I press tab to activate the angle field of the tracker, type 60, and now I'm gonna press Alt A to lock the angle. It's Option A on the Mac. So you can see now it's locked to this angle, and I can see I can find the intersection point with the border, the boundary. Okay, I'm going to do this again here. 1000, start drawing a frame from here, and now I can just select these two frames, and I don't need them, so I can delete them. And now if I show the panels, we can see that now this panel is divided into two panels by those frames, those invisible frames. So I can select this panel and simply delete it to achieve the desired geometry. And now all I need to do is do it on the opposite side. Again, let's just quickly. Actually, I think I have a line here. Yeah, I can draw. No, I cannot draw. Yeah, I can draw this frame. No, that's not at the correct position. Let's move it to the correct position. Sometimes it's tricky to model these frames because there are so many of these snap points and snap lines. Okay, now I'm going to lock it to 120, find the intersection point, delete this frame, and now we have select the panel, delete it. Okay, we have the geometry that we wanted to achieve. And now we want to solve the corners. And to do that, what we are going to do, we're going to select these four corners. And we are going to apply a favorite called foundation corner to these corners. And if we select any of them and look at its settings, you can see that it's using this block frame GDL object, but its size is actually 800 by 800, so it's actually a square, and the axis of this block aligns with the axis of the panels. So basically, if I click OK, I can see that we have a panel 800 millimeters wide from this side, another panel from this side, and they just connect correctly to this corner frame. All right, so when we have these steps, we exit edit mode, and now we actually have finished creating our foundation using a single multi-segment curtain wall element. All right, I think we have a few minutes left, so let's look at another example. This is a simple wall. Just for reference, we're gonna create a roof structure for it. If I look at this sketch, which I created on a independent worksheet, so this is the geometry that I want to create. Let's go to an elevation that looks at, from a perpendicular point of view, it looks at the roof, and then we place this roof structure worksheet as a trace reference. And let's just go to the layer settings dialog, and I'm going to make the layer of this roof wireframe, so it's non-intrusive. It's there for reference, but it doesn't interfere with our work. And so, curtain wall tool, I'm going to start with the roof structure favorite, which is an empty scheme. The only interesting thing here of note is that the boundary frames are 150 by 150 millimeter timber frames. And I'm going to use this boundary geometry method and just start drawing the frame, drawing the boundary of the curtain wall, which is going to be a triangle. So now we have the triangle. Let's select it and click edit mode. And now we're going to use frames to input some of these other geometries that we want to do. We're going to use timber frame favorite, and let's just start creating it. So here is one frame. Here is another one. A third one. And a fourth one. And now we can select this frame and make it invisible, as we won't need it. So let's exit edit mode. This was pretty fast and straightforward, and let's see what we achieved here in 3D. Yeah, so here we now have a roof structure, which is a single element. And let's again set the layer of the roof to wireframe, so it's there just for reference. And let's put this in its proper position. Let's drag it this way. Yes, okay. And we're gonna use the multiply command to create 11 copies, which are all 1000 millimeter apart. And so now we have roof structure, and they are created using the curtain wall tool. All right, we have a few minutes left, so we have time for one more example, and this is a fence. So this fence is actually made out of multiple curtain walls. The concrete block structure of the fence is one curtain wall, and the planks themselves, they are also curtain wall elements. So if we look at the wall and its settings, you can see in the scheme panel that it is a very, very simple scheme. And so that is the result that we are getting by applying this scheme. And maybe one interesting thing is that if we go to edit mode and display only the scheme, you can see that by default, when I drew the reference line, all segments were the same height. So I had to select these segments and use these polygon pad palette commands to set them to the correct boundary, change their boundaries to the desired shape. Okay, and also these stone caps, these were also let me just turn this off. So these are also frames, and for this I used the profiled frame, and in this you can use a profile that you create in the profile manager to select what profile to use for those frames, and using this method I achieve these stone cap geometries. And just a few words about the planks. Here is how the scheme of the planks looks like. These panels are the planks, and the iron frame is made of frames, and they do not intersect, they just overlap. The planks overlap the frames. And then again, we had to go to the scheme grid and use pad palette commands to actually curve the upper boundary of this segment to achieve this geometry. Okay, so this is how it was done. As you can see, there are so many different things that you can do using the curtain wall tool. For example, I didn't show examples, but any kind of tiling, be it on the floor or on the wall, you can do with the curtain wall tool. Or, for example, ceilings. The curtain wall tool is very suitable to do those kind of geometries. So there are actually a lot of possibilities for the use of the curtain wall tool. I hope that I could show you a few use cases. You found these examples useful and something that you can use in your daily work with Archicad. So this concludes my session, and so let me hand back the word to Nathan for the Q&A session. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laszlo, for that presentation. And I'm sitting here going to myself, oh my gosh, that visual, that made a whole new entertainment to curtain wall tools. I don't want that to happen ever again. I'm so sorry to everyone. We'll try and find a way in which we can get that to work somehow moving into the future. Laszlo, one of the things I love, and the reason when I talked to you originally about you doing a presentation as part of this event, the one of the things I thought were really important is from my practices perspective, when I've worked using Archicad, I basically put a bar on using the curtain wall tool. I always just said, no, we're not touching it. It's an illegal tool. We don't want to touch it in the office because of different versions. You know, with trying to model shop fronts, you couldn't elevate it in schedules and the like. So I just kind of thought, let's leave it. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is trying to find different ways in which you can use Archicad to do things. And when you talked about it, doing a presentation on the various uses of curtain walls, I got really excited. So I thought, that's the perfect conversation. So for people that are watching, put some comments in the chat or questions in the chat that you might have of Laszlo, so I can ask him some questions. And we'll start with that. We'll go up to the top. As you can see, I'm starting to fall asleep. My colleague here is helping me push some buttons, has fallen asleep in his chair. It's getting late here in Brisbane, Australia. But Bernarda commented very much, it's a very cool way to use the tool. Marcus is talking about some very good training on curtain walls in the Graphisoft Learn. As far as he knows, SSA customers can get it for free. Time to add a wish onto the forum. Laszlo, you're going to get some wishes on the forum. Maybe that Nathan can sort his streaming stuff out. Everyone's happy with that tip. So Min has asked a question. We finally got through the questions. Will it be possible to schedule curtain wall elevations in Archicad 25 if the geometry is not too complex?
Schedule curtain wall elevations in the Archicad 25?
Yes, that's going to be released in sometime later this year.
I mean, if I knew, let's suppose that I don't know. If I don't know, then I can't answer the question. If I know, then I would not be able to tell you because I would be under a non-disclosure agreement. For example, as a beta tester. So beta testers, they know what's going to be in Archicad 25 because it's already in the beta phase, but they cannot tell. So we will just have to wait a little bit more to find out.
Yeah, there's a lot of wish list items on the forum, and there's a lot of wish list items that I have still that I converse with people at Graphisoft headquarters about quite frequently about my desires to have features in Archicad. So we'll wait and see. We have to wait and see what's going to happen. Bobby wanted to have some. Bobby's surviving in Tasmania. I'm glad you're awake still, mate. I'm starting to struggle. But we'll get there. Can you provide examples of what you have used the curtain wall tool for? That was that presentation, Bobby. Did you watch it? Did you watch it? That's I don't know.
Yeah, so I talked. Yeah, sorry. As I talked at the beginning, sorry.
It might be too cold in Tasmania. He might not notice it. I don't know. What's going on, mate? Did you fall asleep while that session was on, Bobby? But yeah, I think that's what you were showing him. You were showing the different ways in which you can use it.
Yeah. For example, I showed this perforated brick wall, but you could also do the same for a glass wall. A wall made of glass blocks. That would also be
maybe that's a different
a use case. And also, I just refer to it at the end of the session that any kind of tiling that you can think of, be it a tiling on the floor or on the wall. I almost said on the ceiling, but if it's on the ceiling, it's called a ceiling. This how do you call that ceiling? That is it a recessed ceiling or artificial ceiling?
It's a suspended ceiling, basically, but
it's a suspended ceiling,
or an exposed ceiling. Ceiling where you have the framing.
So you can create so you can create suspended ceilings, and the cool thing about that is that you can create these custom frames. You can create the custom panels for curtain walls. So, whatever equipment you see normally, for example, in an office, in the suspended ceiling, you can actually model that using any of the tools and then save it as a curtain wall panel and then use it in the curtain wall. Since, every frame, every panel in a curtain wall can be different, you can, after you created the curtain wall, you can just select any number of individual panels and replace them with the panel that you just saved as a custom curtain wall panel. So you can actually document these suspended ceilings pretty well with the curtain wall tool.
David complimented your instructions despite the video fun, so that was great.
Thanks. Sorry again about the quality. We need to take care of this much better.
We'll get there one day. What a refreshing form to model. I will also join Bobby in asking for examples. That was... What examples? Do you guys mean examples like what he showed you, or do you want the actual files? Is it me being...
No, I think he wants some more use cases.
More use cases?
Yeah, for example, you could...
Bus stop in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for example, you could create a standing seam roof. The way you should think about is this, that look at the building element that you're trying to model and see if there's any pattern in it. Because if there's any repeating pattern in it, chances are that the curtain wall tool will be able to do it.
No,
so, for example, a standing seam. There's a standing seam at every 2 feet, for example. You can create a custom frame to model the standing seam, and then just repeat it as a pattern, and you will have a standing seam roof.
Yeah, John's asked Celia, she's modelling bus stops and all their tiles using curtain wall, whether or not it slows the file down. So, obviously putting in that hit and miss brick wall, it was slow to put in place, but how much does that slow the file down with the geometry?
Yeah, I mean, potentially when you create such a complex curtain wall, you are creating hundreds or even thousands of frames and panels, and that's, it's going to add to the polygons. Additionally, the curtain wall tool is a type of tool that the floor plan view of the tool is a 3D, true 3D projection. So that also, needs resources, as opposed to a simple wall that is a symbolic representation. So when you actually generate the 2D out of the 3D in real time, it's going to take more resources. But this is why I showed that model view option trick. That you can create model view options in which the frame is turned off, or maybe you can display the frames and the panels, but display them in a schematic way. So not the whole geometry is displayed, only maybe the axes and stuff like that. And then it's going to be faster because less geometry needs to be generated.
No, it's important.
Or actually, I also have another idea. I mean, if you're using a lot of curtain walls, it can be, you may consider, doing these types of things in a separate file. Just bring the original file as a hotlink module into the file, so you have it as a reference. But you model all these complex curtain wall geometries in a separate file. And you use them together only when it is needed for visualization or forever, or for whatever
Makes
purpose.
sense. Is this way of modeling, Jared? Welcome, Jared. This is Joel asked the question.
Jared.
Is this way of
Jared Shunom?
Is it the name? I don't know if it's the name. He might have put shoe name there if it was the Jared shoe name. I don't know.
Okay.
Joel is asking, is this way of modeling lighter than modeling with a morph?
You could model the same thing with morph, but the morph tool doesn't have pattern. So the good thing about the curtain wall tool is that it has this pattern intelligence. You create a pattern and it's propagated throughout the whole curtain wall geometry. And if you have to change it, so I think we should think about it not more about creating it, but what if we have to change it? Yeah. I mean, if you use the morph tool, you maybe you have to recreate the whole thing from scratch. If you use the curtain wall, you just redefine the pattern, and the whole element updates based on the pattern. Yeah. So, but I think you always have to consider the specific circumstances and then decide which tool you want to use. I think the best approach is that just get to know your tools as much as possible, so you know all the capabilities and some limitations of which tool knows what, and then you can always decide which is the best for the job.
Yeah, Mats has a comment. There's a lot of positive comments out here, Laszlo. Mats wants to say how much he appreciates your work on Archicad Talk.
Thanks.
Which is important. Someone says that Peterson loves the curtain wall. It's his favourite. Jared Shuname thinks that he should use beams for everything.
Beams?
So, beams. He's a beam fan.
Yeah.
Bobby wanted more uses.
Okay. Actually, that foundation wall, maybe you could use the beam tool to create that.
Yeah, maybe we get Jared to do that, a presentation on that.
Okay.
The one beam that solves it all.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few very versatile tools now in Archicad. It's the railing tool is also very versatile, the beam tool and the column tool. So, there could be sessions about each of these because they have so many uses now.
Yeah. Someone Gabriel wanted to see how we could do curtain walls at the ceiling. It's something we can't fit in today because we've run out of time. But that could be someone who's, either you could put something up on YouTube or someone else could come up with a curtain wall as a ceiling on the horizontal.
Yeah, I just one little thing. One of the geometry methods of creating a curtain wall is the boundary method. So you actually, on the floor plan, you just draw the boundary of the suspended ceiling, and it's going to be on a horizontal plane, and you just elevate it into the proper height. So it's relatively easy to do ceilings.
Yeah, Jared is shoe name, one beam, one model. I know that saying anywhere. So welcome to the audience, Jared.
Okay. Hi.
Laszlo, thank you very much for contributing with your presentation to essentially make Archi Intensive 2021 the high quality that we have. Thank you for participating, and once again, people know you so well from Archicad Talk in terms of trying to keep everyone in line, which is a hard job. Especially
that's the moderator part.
Yes, yeah, the passionate users. So thank you very much for contributing, and we'll see everyone back in 5 minutes for the next session after the ad break.
Okay.